Thank you, Glenfer. Thank you, Raymond, for that kind introduction. Yeah, tulad ng sabi ni Glenfer, susunod na portion ng ating discussion for this afternoon ay yung tinatawag natin na ano kaya yung mga maaring nag-epekto sa atin ng COVID-19, how the real estate services has been affected by COVID, and of course, put it in a better way, how can we turn all this, the present crisis, into opportunities with respect to real estate services? As any salesperson would put it, we actually want to ask the question, how could we turn the present situation into more opportunities with an eye towards the future? Now, I'm hoping na marami tayong tagapakinig ngayon ng mga salesperson. Of course, lagi pag sinabi nating salesperson, salespersons would never say good night, would never say good evening. They always say good morning because we always want to have something very opportunistic and very positive. So, yes, we understand we don't want to be insensitive about the present situation, but as salespersons, again, we want to look at it with a positive eye view. So for the purpose of this presentation, gusto nating i-discuss yung tatlong bagay. Ngayon, disclaimer lang, ito mga i-discuss natin ngayon ay sarili ko lang na pananaw, and I think some views that's also shared by other salespersons, real estate practitioners, although some of this would be backed up by data. But our interest for this afternoon is to really determine how we could turn this tide into positive for everyone. So we asked these three questions: how the market is presently reacting, ano po ba yung nangyayari ngayon sa kalakaran pagdating sa real estate service. We are not only talking about the actual buyers, but we are also talking about how the actual sellers are reacting. Kamusta yung proseso, kamusta yung mga ginagawa, kamusta yung interaction between buyers, sellers, and even the governments. Because as we know, most of real estate services have, of course, to be transacted with the government. So, kamusta? Ang pangalawa, how realtors are reacting. Of course, our salespersons who are watching right now, ano po ba yung mga ginagawa natin to respond to the present crisis? And sa palagay namin, the other most important question is, which industry and behavioral changes may outlive the present crisis? Of course, ngayon, sinasabi natin na maaring may mga temporary measures na ginagawa lahat ng mga tao, both the market and the realtors. But we also believe that some of these changes would outlive the present crisis. And doon tayo titingin, ma'am, if ano yung mga pwedeng maging opportunities na gagawin natin. Okay, so first one. Just to be sure, this is not the first crisis we have faced in the last 5 decades. In fact, in the 1980s, we would see during the time of martial law, because of political unrest and going towards the administration of Cory Aquino with all the coup attempts, there has been political instability caused by the decline which caused the decline in the property scene. In fact, during the time, I don't have the data, but because of this political instability, the real estate market has really went down. But of course, for every down, there's always an up. Okay? So, sinasabi, buhay parang gulong. Sometimes sa baba, but you always trust and believe that at some point, tataas din yan. So, after the 1980s, because of all this that happened, ang naging reaction ng gobyerno, naging reaction ng tao, they ushered regulatory reforms. One of those reforms, for example, would be strengthening the banking system, which imposed now or regulated banks' lending capacity, especially to the real estate industry. Because nakita nila ng panahon na yan na konti lang yung bumibili ng lupa dahil walang pera yung mga tao. Ngayon, yung gobyerno nakaisip sila ng paraan na bakit gawan natin ng paraan para mas madaling makautang, makapag-loan yung mga tao. So again, there was a reaction because of that crisis. And the same thing happened in the 1990s. We have the Asian financial crisis. So the countries in East and Southeast Asia faced economic collapse, but the crisis derailed the Philippines' economic growth. In fact, in 1997 and 1998, there was a downtrend in the real estate industry by 18 to 20%. Again, like I said, after a crisis, there's always that silver lining, because we know, like what happened during the 1990s, by 2020, the real estate industry actually went up by 20%. And again, which ushered to more reforms. During this time, there was a special law enacted by the legislature, which is the Citizenship Retention and Reacquisition Act of 2003, which now allowed former or foreign citizens or former Filipinos to reacquire their dual citizenship for them to acquire real estate properties in the Philippines. So again, because of the crisis, merong reaction, and because of that reaction, tumataas ulit. The same thing happened more recently in 2008, global financial crisis. And again, after that, there was a recovery in 2010. Now, presently, we are now in 2020, COVID-19, the present crisis. Okay. Of course, we see before this one, there was a steady increase until the present crisis. Because of unemployment, business consumer confidence has been low, slowdown in OFW remittance are presently among the factors which are affecting the industry. So, meron din tayong decline in tourism arrivals. So, yung mga tao hindi nakapag-Boracay yung summer, hindi nakapuntang Bohol. Of course, that affected din yung real estate industry. Again, when we're saying real estate industry, we're not just talking about buying and selling. We're also talking about the hospitality industry, which includes hotels, Airbnb, kahit yung mga pasimpleng nagpaparenta sa mga tourist destinations. So that yan apektado. But then again, looking at the current trend, looking at the current trend, we know that after this crisis, akit ulit. So that's what where we want to look at now. Okay, so yeah. So right now, we see that realtors are reacting in a very specific way. Now, I don't have the data for the Philippines, but this is data in the US. And I think it's also applicable in the Philippines. Because of the current situation brought about by COVID-19, there has actually been an increase by 68% of agents or realtors leaning into e-signature and digital closing tools. 46% of agents are now no longer doing physical viewings. Tulad ng sabi ni Attorney Ricky kanina, meron na tinatawag tayo na e-viewing ngayon. And again, basically all of this. So there is a trend now going to from mostly online and e-commerce transactions. Now, like we said kanina, kahit na merong COVID-19, there would always be demand in real estate. And alam natin, because of the trend, even if there's a crisis, always after that crisis, there's a way for people to bounce back. And real estate industry will bounce back. Ang tanong lang natin is when and how would people react after that one? So, well, there would, and it has always been said that the real estate is a resilient industry, as historically shown in any downturn. The real estate market has a way of naturally correcting itself. However, the preference of people would surely be affected, and such changes might outlive the present crisis. So what are we looking at? In the future, probably people would be looking at, if they want to buy certain properties, people like myself, we would be considering density. Now, one thing that was highlighted during the present crisis is the fact that assets that have greater density seem to have been the hardest hit by the COVID-19. Sa Philippines, hindi nakapagtaka na yung mga maraming positive cases are those in areas or barangays na dikit-dikit yung mga bahay. Okay? It's not only because of any health issues, but again, because of the physical space. And we expect na people, of course, if you have money, the means, people later on, hindi lang basta-basta mawawala to. Kasi magiging mindset ng mga tao is, what if magkaroon ulit ng another crisis? What if magkaroon ulit ng another pandemic? Kung bibili ako ng bahay ngayon, might as well bibili ako dun sa bahay na medyo maduwag-duwag. Nakita rin natin yung mga tao parang gustong bumalik ng probinsya kasi nakikita nila mas may space and mas maraming readily available food source. Kasi ngayon, yung mga ibang kawawa nating mga kababayan, walang mga makain dahil walang trabaho. Pero makikita natin yung mga kaibigan natin sa probinsya kahit paano, meron silang handang mapagkain ng makapagkukuhanan. And mas maluwag yung mga properties. No? Also, sinecheck ng mga tao ngayon yung governance. So, pag pupunta kayo sa Facebook, social media, marami itong mga memes or jokes na sinasabi, yung mga taga-QC gusto nang lumipat ng Pasig, mga taga-QC gusto nang lumipat ng Marikina kasi mas magaling yung mayor nila, mas makita nila na mas maganda yung ayuda, mas maganda yung response ng gobyerno. So ito, pwede rin makitang opportunity. Dapat ba yung mga realtors later on would do projects sa mga alam nilang cities na maganda yung governance? The same thing with local tourism. There is a foreseen increase in local tourism because even after the crisis and even after international travel would be already permitted again, nakikinita na yung mga tao would rather prefer local tourism muna. Parang takot mo na yung mga tao magbiyahe abroad, pumunta ng Korea, pumunta ng Japan, pumunta lalo na halimbawa din sa mga iba pang bansa na marami rin naging positive cases, dala ng takot ng COVID-19. So even after COVID-19, baka yung mga tao mas gusto nila munang local tourism. So baka mas dumaming pupunta sa Boracay, sa Bohol, o sa mga iba pang local destinations. Ganun din sa commercial lease. Makikita natin na ngayon, apparently, malalaman ng mga malalaking kumpanya na effective naman pa yung work from home. In fact, with the work from home arrangement, nakakatipid sila, wala silang masyadong overhead. Effective din naman pala yung online meeting. So baka magkaroon so most businesses might consider no longer renting offices or significantly reducing the size of lease spaces. So those are some things that could be considered. So again, I think the sharing with you, sabi nga ni Warren Buffett, only buy something that should be perfectly happy to hold if the market shuts down for 10 years. So put it in a different way, people now would be thinking, I will buy property, I would lease property, I will be involved in a property that I think if in the next 10 years magkaroon ulit ng pandemic, okay ako. Doon ako titira sa lugar o barangay na feeling ko safe ako kung sakaling magkaroon man ng isa pang pandemic. So now these are things na will be considered by a lot, even after. Now, the challenge now is for realtors to anticipate these possible behavioral changes. Also, the present practices of realtors should likewise be matched. Now, we see that there's a current trend to shift to e-everything, not just emails, but e-meetings, e-shopping, even e-dating, e-seminars, just like what we're having now, an e-conference. In fact, meron pa nga e-numan. So lahat, everything e-commerce na. So there has been, in fact, an increase in online selling, so much so that BIR wants to do a crackdown, perhaps realizing how effective and efficient this suddenly realized online market platform. Kaso ang problema ngayon, especially with the real estate industry, is that minsan, kahit gusto mong gumawa ng paraan na online, meron pa ring gap. Meron pa ring gap, and that gap is okay. So market, minsan nagiging online. Si realtors, minsan nagiging online din. Si government, slowly nagiging online. Kaso, ang question ay, how do we put these three together? For example, tulad na banggit na Attorney Ricky, yung mga tao gustong magpa-transfer ng title. Kaso yung title, ayaw na nang lumabas ngayon, di ba? So, yung market, meron sa yung in-offer na pwedeng tulungan ka online. You can view your documents online. The realtors would be able to assist you online. The government maybe has infrastructure to do things online. But the question is, sino yung magko-connect sa kanila? Sino magko-connect sa market, sa realtors, and sa government? And I think ang next panelist natin sa Attorney Luis would be able to help us on this one. So, yun lang.
Ayos. Magko-comment. Comment. Ganun. Very interesting. Van, ano lang, ito muling slide mo, may nakalagay, add the slide title 3.
Sorry. Sabi niyo sir, ginawa ko yung madaling araw ko rin.
Oo. Tapos,
Break.
yung kaninang point mo na about US data, kung may similar na Philippines, maganda din yun. Pero kung wala talaga.
So, wala akong nakita eh. Tsaka, yun ang una ko na-google na meron ng ready-made